the politicians
Yeah, I mean,
who are
I guess to what
having an
extent is that
open mind
the literature of
to
California now, because we're
get these concepts that you're working on.
that.
What other avenues
Flux,
aside from politics?
a place that
do you
looks,
see
at
making
least
sure
to
this
my
idea
eyes,
happen?
fully developed. You still find wilderness.
The way that I talked about in the book
but
is
that's,
that
obviously in peril.
you got to have
So maybe you
a
could-
good chunk of the
maybe
California
talk a
people
little bit
talk
about
about
it.
this.
Obviously, that's sort of central.
It becomes sort of an enemy for sure, and then at that point, they would request the state government to do what's called a blue ribbon panel. So the state government wants to regulate something. They do these panels every year. Last year they had one on mental retardation and they had one on nail salons. What they say is, we want to regulate something, we don't know anything about it. We'll get together a bunch of experts and basically produce a manual that the government looks at in high detail. If the public was serious about this, they request the blue ribbon panel, the government looks into it. At that point, you have a California state government version of this book.
I see.
Officially looked into and blessed by the government, saying these are the hard facts, totally weird. Now, this is all factually based, but now you have the government saying, at that point, this thing snowballs.
Now, I mean, the reason I'm concerned, the one question I would be raising about that is, depending on what particular party happens to be in session, or
Right.
yeah, what prevents a subsequent election from not overturning any of the ideas that have been put in place? For example, I mean, right now, what they're calling Obamacare, which is actually the official name is the Affordable Health Care Act.
Right.
So somehow it got mislabeled in that sense.
Right.
But what I'm saying, and Mitt Romney said, "Oh, I will overturn this."
Right.
So what will prevent a future election with a different party in place from overturning anything that's been put in place?
We would follow the model that Scotland did. And in the last 5 years, Scotland was basically a colony state of England for the last 4 years. And then in the last 5, and I mean these 5, there were a series of debates and votes and strong language in the debates, but just debates.
I'm sure. I mean, I remember the healthcare debate like 2-3 years ago.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy.
Right, but just that's where it is, strong debates. Scotland's gone to almost completely independent, where they have the military and the British pound intact, but all other policy decisions that used to be handled in London are now moved to Holyrood, the capital of Scotland.
I see.
So dollar, military stays the same, subnational sovereignty, everything else returns. So healthcare, retirement, immigration, banking, you name it, decided in Sacramento.
It would be decided within the state. And
Yeah.
essentially, I mean, just about one step below seceding from the Union.
Right. But, and people have brought that up, but this is subnational sovereignty as practiced by Scotland and 25 other countries around the world now, and who have had these forms of government for the last 100 years. And if you go back 100 years before that, there's another 20 countries that have had this. So it's a rare form of government, but it's stable. And it exists in almost all cultures around the world. I mean, it's universally applicable.
I see.
So we would follow that, and we would get our government to officially look at becoming that sort of government, while following this economic model of, okay, we move to be subnational sovereign, and then the next step we move to become the global government and business negotiation center, the way Switzerland is. Because the Swiss said they can't do it now. They said that themselves.
They can't what?
That they can no longer be the discussion and government and business negotiation center anymore for this new world order the way they have been for the last 100 years. There's a report by the mayor of Switzerland and there's a report by the government of Switzerland saying that the world simply changed too much. They cannot be the center. When they were the center, most of the world was owned by Europe and America.
That's correct.
Now in the future, it's going to be Europe and America, still there, but India, China, Brazil, Southeast Asia, and Russia.
The world economy.
Right. These are the new superpowers, and they're going to be as rich and as powerful as Europe and America. So we need a new negotiation center where they all feel comfortable discussing in the way that Switzerland brought Europe together. And I argue in the book that the thing that made the Swiss successful can only be found here in California.
That's
for the next
that's your parallel.
Yes, yeah. We can pick up where they left off and literally argue that only we can. So it's either not going to happen or we're going to do it. And we'll either make the world still negotiate and talk more and become super wealthy and make sure that we have the best public schools in the world, or we can stay poor and let the world order fall apart.
Well, in order to get that kind of a conversation going at this stage, you need either a grassroots movement or a really high high-level politician or a high-level
So
personality
about
that
music
people
plays not so
will,
much about,
go to unless you
are
you have this endeavor of doing this
Right now it's
yourself.
me. Well, right now it's me, but I'm trying to get the idea out. Somebody asked me, like, do you want to run for office as this is going? And I said, sure, but I really think there's a lot of people who, if they heard this idea and they look like 10% of the population was talking about it, you would see political leaders rise up. People are ambitious. This is a whole new form of government. This is more new powers, more exploration. There will be people who do it. Schwarzenegger's a good example.
Yeah, the recall.
Yeah, but he was the only governor who ever said that California is paying way more into the federal system than it ever gets out. He criticized George W. Bush for it, and he criticized Barack Obama for the exact same thing. Two totally different political parties. Same criticism from Schwarzenegger.
It's just,
so we're
the
talking about
spending
character
model, essentially.
The spending model. I mean, and if you look at world trade, we had trade deals with
One,
Asia.
how
They would
where
create
that character
50,000
comes
jobs
from.
here in California.
What was the moment when you knew?
George
okay,
W.
I have
Bush
to
sat on
do
that
this?
for 4 years. Barack Obama sat on that for 4 years.
The book is
Two totally different presidents, exact same response. Why? It's not important to America the way that it is to California to make sure that we have continually improved trade deals. Our economy is 25% international trade. The average U.S. state, 5%. It's not important. It's never going to be important. We're the worst hit state in this recession now. We've had
It's pretty bad, I know.
we have 50,000 jobs waiting online. George W. Bush, I'm too busy. Barack Obama, I'm too busy. And yet they care about us?
Well, they want the votes from the delegates from the state, obviously, to vote for whenever they run. So, yeah, I know. Well, thank you for the enlightenment aspect of it. I'll do some more research. I'll be back later.
Or go on YouTube or the internet and type in Marcus Ruiz Evans. Movies, interviews, everything.